Round of applause for Dawn, please.
Good evening. Again, thanks for having us. Thanks for having me. I always appreciate that. Three things I want to talk to you about. The first thing is I'm just going to call it gifts. The second thing is a little bit about health. We talked earlier, quite a bit about supplements, and we've talked about what those supplements are capable of doing. We've touched on some things like hormones and insulin and things like that that I know you guys are interested in. But there's a concept that has fascinated me for a long time, and they say that if you know about 2.5% of the words in a language like Spanish, you know about 90% of you can communicate about 90%, right? So if I can just give you maybe 2.5% of some things that I've had the pleasure of learning over a long span of time, I think we can get you 80 to 90% to a place where it'd be great to be. Okay, so that's one of the things that that I want to talk to you about. And remember earlier we talked about this idea of integrity and what that means. So that's the third thing that I want to talk to you guys about. So first, let's talk about gifts, and I'm talking about gifts that I have had the pleasure to experience in my life that have really changed the way that I view things and look at things. One of them, believe it or not, I'm going to call the gift of sickness. So part of the reason that I got involved with health and nutrition way back when was because I understand what it's like to sort of be left for dead by the medical profession. I was one of those people that fell through the cracks, and there was no helping me, so to speak. I also know, because of that experience, it was bad enough to where there were many, many nights where I would go to bed at night really not sure whether I was going to wake up in the morning. So I learned how to feel that, how to experience that, and in some ways how to accept that. So it paved the way for a lot of the things that I do today. That will develop and create some real passion when you've had experiences like that. And the third thing is, and I think it's the most important thing, what I learned from the experience is that your body and your mind can get to a place where it seems virtually impossible for you to ever get back to health. And I'm here to tell you that this thing that we call our mind and our body has regenerative powers that we just have no idea what it can do. And the only way we're going to allow that to happen is if we get out of its way and let it do what it does. That's what I've learned. Thank you. Do you want me to be done now, or can I? So the second thing that I learned, or the second gift, I call the gift of learning. There's two places in my life where this really is important. One of them, a long time ago in 1984, I took a position with Anthony Robbins, and I was his personal assistant. And I worked in, thank you. I worked, he lived in Del Mar at the time. Del Mar, California is a suburb of San Diego, and he owned a house called the Del Mar Castle. And Anthony was really just beginning, but he was, in 1984, he was like a 23 or 24-year-old phenomenon, right? So I know him well, and I can tell you that there's few people that have the ability to transform and change people as rapidly and as effectively as Anthony Robbins. He's an incredible human being. But this is what happened. He used to be gone all the time because he's off doing his walking on fire seminars and all that stuff, right? So I'm left back at the ranch to do what we were doing. He was writing his book at the time called Unlimited Power, so I was doing research on that. And so there was a lot of great things that were happening. But Anthony had an office, and that was a private office, and that's where he would go and think and write and read and all that. And one day as he was leaving, he gave me an extraordinary gift. He said, here's the key to my office. You're welcome to go in there and look at what's made me what I am. It's all the books, all the information. It's in there, and I don't let anyone else in there. You've got the key. So, needless to say, I was like a kid in a candy store in that office, right? So two things happened. One was I learned the value of picking up a book and reading it and marking it and reading it again and marking it and conceptualizing and trying to understand and then get another book and cross-reference what I read from one to the other and just this learning process, right? But the other thing that happened that was really, really interesting was as I'm sitting around looking, because the office, the Del Mar Castle, right? So the office was in a turret. You know what a turret is? That circular thing in the castle? That's where his office was. So we had to go up this circular steps to get up there. And then the books were like all surrounding you. So you'd sit in the middle at the desk and it was just like, to me, you already heard my book story, right? You know I'm a little bit weird on the book thing. But it was awesome to be sitting in the middle of all this information. I could just look around and you could see, because I was around Anthony so much, I could see the things that forged his thinking, that forged this guy who is so incredibly capable of, in the moment, just transforming things for himself and other people. So by looking at that and by seeing that, I sort of had this love affair with human potential and personal development and, you know, that sort of thing. Now, the third thing is that thing that we talked about earlier, and it's that aspect or idea of integrity. Now, I'm not talking about necessarily my personal integrity. What I'm talking about is what I learned about integrity as a result of becoming a formulator and somebody who wanted to create supplements. But there's a story behind that, and I want you to hear it. I went to a conference in Bregenz, Austria. It was called the Neurobiology and the Neuroendocrinology of Aging. Now, I know what you're thinking. What kind of nerd would go to a freaking conference like that, right? Well, believe it or not, I just thrive on this stuff, right? So what it was about was really all the concepts and science around aging, our biology, and our brain, and how it all connects. Really fascinating. So that long title, it was really just about all the people doing research and work on anti-aging. And I'm talking about the best of the best around the world. All these people flocked to this conference. And it was held in a 13th century monastery, incredible place right on a lake called Lake Bodenbach. I don't know if any of you know that area, but it's Germany and Austria and everything is right in this one area. It's an incredible place. So anyway, I arrived there, and one of the second day or so, I'm sitting at lunch. While I'm sitting there, over comes this team of these scientists from around the world. And I was with a doctor friend of mine. And I thought they were coming over to talk to him. Thinking, what are they coming to talk to me for? They sat down, they asked if they wouldn't mind if I talked with him. Because they had heard that the reason that I was there, because I was a journalist, I had a radio program, I was a consumer advocate, and I was there to learn. So they started asking me questions, and the questions started out nice enough. And then what happened was, and this was one of the things that really changed my perception, was they started to tell me that they spend millions of dollars in research. They spend countless hours of their own time. These researchers, these biochemists, these PhDs, I mean, they get paid well, but nothing extraordinary for the amount of time and effort that they put into things. And they said, how could your industry bastardize the things that we do so terribly? And I kind of went, wow. And I said, well, I need to tell you something, and just as important as what you said to me, you need to hear what I'm going to say to you. And that is, there's a big difference between science in your world and marketing in that world. And I'm sorry that they don't come together sometimes, but that's just the reality of the situation. And they looked at me, all of them, with their jaws like on the floor, unable to conceptualize or believe that we would allow this to happen. Because in their world, there's no room for anything like that. So I walked away from that, and they said to me, You need to do something about it. What am I going to do about that? So I went back and I wrote a paper. And the paper was called The 4 Principles of Effective Supplementation. And what those 4 principles are what I learned from them and what I've lived by since that time. And those 4 principles are very simple and straightforward. They're number 1, you must have superior quality ingredients, right? Now, what does superior quality mean? It means that the efficacy of the natural compound or substance has to already be proven. It's a foregone conclusion. But it also, at the same time, has to be safe, right? So that's what I would consider superior quality. The second thing was you have to provide superior quality ingredients in optimal dose range, okay? It's the dose range. It doesn't, you don't give the same amount that you give to Shaquille O'Neal to a 90-pound grandma, right? That's what I mean by a dose range. And, you know, if you know that if you have a ripping headache and it takes 2 aspirins to solve that, then that's the dose range for you. Some people it might take 1, some people it might take a half aspirin, some people it might take 3. But you wouldn't take a quarter of an aspirin if it took 2, and you wouldn't take 20 either, right? So that's the concept of dose range. You just, in all studies, show you basically where the dose range is, all right? The third thing is you have to have some expertise in formulating. You have to know what you're doing. You can't put cats and dogs in the same bottle, I guess is a way to say that, right? And the fourth thing is it has to be bioavailable. Now, so I thought, well, I'm a consultant to the industry and all that. Let's take that paper out there. Well, guess what? I got a pretty frosty reception from the supplement companies, and I got a standing ovation from the medical people, right? But it doesn't matter what the medical people are doing. We got to get the supplement companies doing it, right? So literally, I just decided this is the axiom that I'm going to live by, and I cannot control what other people are going to do, but I can talk to as many people as I possibly can and let them know this is the way that I see that and what I think should happen, okay? So those are the 3 gifts, major gifts that I've had in my life that sort of formed the way that I think now and how that I want to spread my message and get get the message that I think is important out to the world to as many people who want to hear, that. Now, let's talk about health for a second. You did such a beautiful job to describe some of the aspects that I'm going to talk about now, which is, there's physical health. We know that, and it's very important. But we know that it ties into physical health, ties into mental health. And we know that your mental health ties into emotional health. And then we know that emotional health also ties into mental health, which ties into physical health. And we know that spiritual health, or I call it more purpose, right? It's doing something for a greater good. That is also something that when you take that recipe for health, that's a nice recipe, in my mind. So let's talk about that 2.5% that I can give you right now that I think from a physical health perspective, I hope that this is beneficial to you. Here's what I've learned. And this is, if you could take everything that's been swirling around, in my mind for the last 35 years and all the health information and everything that, I've had the opportunity to do. I want you to just think about this concept. We have this thing called our metabolism. And the definition of metabolism is the sum total of the biochemical processes that sustain life, right? That sounds pretty important. Now, what we're not understanding fully, in my view, is what controls metabolism, right? What are the controlling mechanisms on metabolism? Because if you can fix that and you fix metabolism, guess what you do? That's what either brings health up or sinks health down, is when your metabolism, which is responsible for life processes, is inefficient. Then your life processes are not good and you feel lousy. But if they're optimal, you feel great, okay? I think it boils down to the concept of anabolic and catabolic. You've heard that? You know what I'm talking about? Now, I'm not talking in terms of muscle building or muscle tearing down that necessarily. What I'm talking about is your metabolism is responsible for the building up of And that's what insulin does. It allows the nutrients to be absorbed and available to the cell, right? And you have the breaking down of or the utilization of. That's what adrenaline and cortisol do. When you need the glycogen in your bloodstream in order for you to stay functional, how do you think it gets there? You know how it gets there? It's released by cortisol. That's what your brain does. It sends a message to your adrenal glands and tells cortisol and adrenaline, go to these sites and pull this energy. How many of you have heard of a 110-pound mother lifting a car off a trapped child? Right? How do you think that happens? If you think about one burst of extraordinary energy like that, what do you think's going on? Well, she had an event that put nothing in her mind except the inevitability of making that happen, and she was able to generate enough strength as a result of that perception in order to lift up that car. But if she didn't have cortisol and adrenaline just ripping through her system to be able to take that glycogen out and use that as that energy, it's not going to happen. You see, that's how it works. So what I'd like for you to understand, and the reason why I talk so much about insulin, adrenaline, cortisol, is because these are what are considered your major hormones. And the difference between a major hormone and a minor hormone is major hormones, if you do not have enough of them, you suffer from this harsh condition known as death. Other hormones like estrogen, progesterone, testosterone, luteinizing hormone, follicle stimulating hormone, leptin, ghrelin, all the other things that we know, you're not going to feel good when those start to deteriorate. But it doesn't produce this thing called death, right? Because what death means is that your metabolism can no longer sustain life. And since these hormones are controlling your metabolism, these are the things that I believe that we should look at first, all right? So I don't want to go into it because we don't have time for that, but what I want to do is to lead you in a direction. How many of you have ever heard of or read the book by Dr. Diana Schwarzbein? Okay, if you haven't done that, just write this down if you can, or just remember it. Diana Schwarzbein is someone that I think that if you really want to understand these bodily processes and how this occurs, and how is it, I'm going to spell it for you in just a second, and how is it that you can really bring up somebody's energy, maximize the process of their metabolism so the rate at which they are sustaining life is at a high level, because that's what we're really wanting for people. And how it is that you can help the function of your cortisol and your adrenaline and get that adrenal gland to stop beating the living daylights out of you, because that's what's happening with think about this. If we're overly anabolic, what's happening is we have a tendency to get bigger, because over anabolic means that that's the building up of. When we become overly catabolic, it means that we're tearing down our muscle tissue and other structure and functional tissue in our body, because adrenaline and cortisol is using it to keep all of us good and stressed. You understand? So if you look at it from the perspective of, you're going to notice this with a lot of people and clients out there. You'll see people that have a lot of body fat, but if you could look through that body fat at the amount of muscle that they have, you would be absolutely horrified at how little there is there. So what's happening is these people are simultaneously overly anabolic and overly catabolic at the same time. So if you just look at it like, how do I get somebody catabolically balanced and anabolically balanced? You've got yourself something that is a no-lose situation. You're always going to improve them as a result of that. That's the little 2.5% that I want to offer you, for that. Thanks. Now, SCHWARZBEIN. SCHWARZBEIN. The Schwarzbein principle. And there's a number of them. She's got a number of them. But that's where you can get the most information, I think, is the most valuable. She's an incredible woman, too. And talk about her diet when she was in college going to medical school was candy corns and cotton candy. and she just ruined her metabolism in herself. And she didn't know what to do about it because, of course, she's all wrapped up in this medical thing because she was going to school to be an endocrinologist. And, yeah, imagine that. So when she gets done with her studies, she barely got through because she said she was so weak and so debilitated. But then she figured out at some point, she read something somewhere that maybe I should eat better. Maybe that's part of my problem. So being the brilliant endocrinologist that she was, she took that advice. And then what happened was she started working in Santa Barbara as low-level entry endocrinologist in a big diabetic clinic. And guess what happened? All these people are coming in, diabetics, right? And they're saying, you know, what am I supposed to do? And she's giving them the standard American Diabetic Association, eat your oatmeal and drink your orange juice in the morning. And when you have low blood sugar, drink a soda pop and blah, blah, blah. And she's just spewing this out to these people. And all these people are coming back to her and going, hey, I already can't see. 2 of my limbs are cut off, and you're telling me to keep doing this stuff? And she kept hearing this over and over again. And I got to hand it to her because she stood up and she believed in something different. And she went out there and she literally has created this whole concept around anabolic, catabolic, major hormones, minor hormones. And as an endocrinologist, I don't know of anyone that's doing better work than Dr. Schwarzman. All right. So she's just a great resource for you. Okay? You're welcome. All right, so let's talk just really quickly about the idea of mental health. The way that I look at it, I'm not talking about mental health from any other perspective other than we've got a conscious and a subconscious mind, don't we? And I don't know if you know this, but the way it works is our behavior is dictated by your conscious and your subconscious mind. But they now sort of worked it out to where about 16% of the behavior that we develop is generated from the conscious mind, and about 84% is from the subconscious mind. So in other words, most of it is coming from a place that you don't even think about. You have no concept of, right? So the idea behind the subconscious mind and health is that, you know, we all have habituated patterns of behavior, right? And the way that we develop these habituated patterns, they can come from childhood. You can start developing them right now. In fact, you guys are developing some really awesome habituated patterns of behavior as a result of being here. But you know that we can also develop habituated patterns that don't serve us, right? And so we end up with these things called limiting beliefs and, you know, all that. So we know and understand that. But what neuroscience is really telling us is that you don't get rid of that. You have a neural pathway burned in your brain. But here's what happens. You ever just imagine you're walking up to the edge of a jungle, right? And there's no path to go. So what you do is you start sort of hacking your way through and doing the best that you can to, you know, get through, and you go as far as you can. And then you come back the next day and you sort of hack your way through a little bit farther, and the dirt gets a little bit more worn, and so you start really drilling a path through the jungle, right? Now, once you get that path pretty set, that's going to turn into just think of the same thing happening in your brain, that's going to turn into a habituated pattern of behavior. So every time you get into a situation that's the same or similar that triggers that for you, you're just going to respond like Pavlov's dog down that pathway. There's no getting around it. You understand what I'm saying? So this is human behavior. You cannot change that. What you do, though, is you have to begin to use the power of your mind to not put focus or thought on whatever that may be. What happens is, just like a pathway in a jungle, that when you don't use it, it starts to grow back over, and pretty soon you can't see it anymore. That's what happens. So what you have to do, though, is you go over here to the good part of the jungle, and you make your pathway there. So you have to swap one for the other. Whenever you're in a situation where you know you're being controlled by habituated patterns of behavior, you have to realize and understand that what you have to do is not try to change or get it out of you or have somebody beat it out of you or turn yourself upside down and shake it and hope that it falls out your ear. That's not going to happen. What you've got to do is just stop thinking about that. In other words, stop thinking about what you don't want and start thinking about what you do want. That's how it works, all right? Great. Okay, real quick, here's another one of those sort of 2.5% things, and it's about emotions. I love the talk and the concept about emotions, because what is our life really all about? Not a succession of one emotional experience after the next, right? Some feel good, some feel bad. Well, if you take that concept, that emotions, some of them feel good and some of them feel bad, this is something that struck me a long time ago, and I just thought, wow, man, if I could get myself to just do this, it would be great. So for a long time, I've been practicing this, right? And what it is it's looking at emotions instead of looking at them like things that we have to experience and, we're always trying to figure them out and why you get angry or why you're happy here or not happy there. If you think of it like this, as emotions are sort of a form of guidance, right? And what they do is when an emotion feels good, it's that gut instinct that you girls have so much better developed than us boys. It's saying to you, wow, this is what life is all about. You're on the right track. If this feels good, do more of it. Right? And so your emotions are just telling you, you have your ship going in the right direction. Now, when a negative emotion comes up, you can look at that as guidance because that's that internal guidance system saying to you, stop. Stop. Get a hold of yourself and understand that you've allowed the thought process to go off of what you were wanting desperately to now the reasons why you can't have it. And the emotion is coming as a result of you getting off track. So it's like a guidance system that keeps, get a negative emotion, you go, nope, back. Think of the positive. And as long as you stay in that positive state, guess what? This is what the law of attraction really is all about, right? Huh? Right? They're trying to tell you that you can sit around and go, oh, good. If I think good thoughts, everything comes to me. No, no, no. You have to sustain good thoughts, and you have to do it with emotion, right? That's how that whole thing works. And then the final thing is about, it's about purpose, right? What I know about purpose is, boy, you can take somebody who's depressed, not feeling well, has all kinds of problems, and if they can find a sense of purpose, that's gone, right? So having a sense of purpose is really something that, I don't know of too many things that are more healthy for you, that will align your biochemistry, get the neurotransmitters in your brain firing the way that they're supposed to. And you know what? Don't blame me for saying this, but you don't even have to take any supplements to make that happen, right? It's just a matter of getting to a place where you've decided that this is what you want your life to be about, right? And I think people put too much pressure on themselves to find their purpose, find their purpose. As soon as you put that kind of pressure on yourself, you're not going to find it. That law of attraction is repelling it from you because you're anxious about it, right? So the idea is to just know that all you have to do is put out there in the great universe that you want to find what it is that's in your heart that you're here for, and just relax and let it go. And you don't have to find it, it finds you, right? All right. Okay, so one last thing that I want to talk about. It's a really great concept, and the concept is called inevitability thinking. Anybody ever heard of that before? Inevitability thinking. I'm going to talk to you about that. Let me give you an example. So let's say, now you've been here at this weekend, you've heard what myself and Cliff and James and Jennifer has had to say, and now when you leave here, when you're done, you're just filled with all this excitement and all this possibility, and you can talk to yourself in a certain way, and you can say, man, I hope I'm able to take this information and really do something with it. You can say that, or you can say, I really think that I can do something and I can really make something of myself with this information. You can say that. But I want you to just listen to what I have to say here right now and just internalize it for a second. Listen to my words and then just internalize it. What if you said this? What do I need to do to make my dream inevitable? Let me tell you something about your non-conscious mind. When you give it that kind of instruction, it goes to work just like that. Right? So right now, just by me saying that to you, and by me hearing myself say it, we've put ourselves in a whole different vibrational rate to get to where it is that we want to be, just by doing that. So step number one in inevitability thinking is always ask yourself, what do I need to do to make this inevitable? Because your subconscious mind goes right to work. Because guess what happens? This is what's so cool about it. We can set goals, we can solve problems, we can do all that. Everybody's done that. Problem is, very few people can get themselves to follow through and do it, right? And the reason I believe is because right in the beginning, they did not activate the real power that they have in their mind, which is everybody can do anything they want and make it inevitable as long as they send that message and make sure that they hold themselves accountable as a result of it, right? So, first thing, inevitability thinking, say it to yourself. Let yourself hear it inside that other person that's talking to you, the two people that you always have dialogue with in there, you know, the one that says chocolate cake and the one that says no chocolate cake. Well, just listen to the one over there, right? That's the one that's going to get you to the inevitable place. All right.
There you go. Check, check.
Okay, so the second thing, and this is, I would call it optional. It's not for sissies, this next thing. But if you want to make something inevitable, here's something that you can do. You have to make or create something that is more painful than what you're trying to avoid. Let me give you an example. Yep, I'll repeat that. What you have to do is you have to create more pain for yourself by not doing it than doing it. Understand what I mean? Let me give you an example. The gentleman that I first heard about inevitability thinking is a marketing guru named Eben Pagan. And he was doing a seminar, and he had somebody come up that he said, anybody want to do some work with inevitability thinking? You know, and this guy ran up like his hair was on fire. So he's up there, he sat down, and I could go through it, but I'll make a long story short. What this guy ended up getting to finally, because you have to get real specific with this, right? He goes, look, I have this anxiety that I'm not ever getting things done, and there's all this stuff lingering, and I can't get control of this in my mind. But he said, I have these kids, and I want to spend quality time with my children, but when I do that, I'm always thinking about something else. And so he said, all right, let's pick one child. What do you want to do? He goes, look, I have a little son. He's like 6 years old, and he's just reading voraciously right now, and he just can't get enough learning every book. And what he wants to do before he goes to bed is he wants to discuss it. He wants to talk about it. So he said, the few times that I've just sat there with him for 25 minutes, 30 minutes, and just listened to him and had dialogue with him, and we discussed and talked about what he was so interested in. He goes, it was so fulfilling, you know. So Eben steps back and he says, and I couldn't agree more with him, all right, look, there's a lot of things that all of us want to do. There's a lot of things that we want to accomplish, but it's hard to think of too many things as important and as powerful as doing something like that, right? So Eben said, all right, we need to make this inevitable. So here's the story. It came out that his ex-wife, he was separated, so he was getting the kids part of the time. This is when he wanted to spend time with them, right? The ex was afraid, definitely afraid, that he was just going to abandon them. And he knew that. So Eben, in his clever mind, said, here's what we're going to do. If you're willing to do it, here's what we'll do. Write a check for $1,000. Okay? You're going to take that check, and you're going to give it to your ex. And then you're going to pick when you have your children, your child, what night you're going to talk to him, and you're going to set that schedule. And you're going to do it not only for him, but for you. And what you're going to do is you're going to text her before and after. And any time that you don't do that, you call her up and you tell her, go cash the check. Is that bringing the pain or what? You see? And then he said, like I said, this is not for sissies. He said, then what you're going to do is you're going to write her another check, and you're going to give that to her. And you're going to you got to keep that pain in front of you, because Anthony Robbins talks a lot about that pain-pleasure principle, right? So just think about that. Now, the third thing about inevitability thinking is really about being in a circumstance or situation where you have a mentor or you have a group exactly like you guys are doing right now. And, you know, I have to tell you, I've had some, you know, powerful, great mentors in my life that I so much appreciated. But I have to tell you, I think I'm a pretty good judge of them, and I don't think there's many better than that. So you guys have to, I think you know this, but just if it helps to hear it again, how grateful, you know, we need to be for somebody like Jennifer who is holding the torch. And, you know, I've sat back and I've watched her over the last couple of days just, I mean, do you have any idea what she's handling in here? I mean, you talk about just somebody who's on purpose and knows what they want. That's a mentor. So I would say if your boat is docked in her harbor, keep it there, right? All right. So a couple things just to end this. There's a couple of sayings that I've heard over the course of, you know, my life that just have stuck with me. They're just meaningful to me, so I'm just going to share them with you because I think they just get things real, right? And one of the sayings is that the main cause of all unhappiness and failure is sacrificing what you want most for what you want right now, right? Sacrificing what you want most for what you want right now, right? And I personally believe that that is the answer to human potential and personal development, is you have to delay the gratification that you want in the moment so that you can have the prize, right? And the second one is a lady by the name of Carolyn Meese. I don't know if you know of Carolyn Meese. She's a great, great lady. She's a medical intuitive, and she wrote a book called, one of them, Why People Don't Heal and How They Can. And I was reading that book, and I came across this this thing. And it just appeals to me. If it's a little bit hard-ass, just go with me on it. What she said was, what most people want is a wishbone, and what they need is a backbone. Right? Ever heard that before? And I think, you know, when I really think about it, all the years that I've been doing this and all the times that I really needed to get myself to do something, really most of the time, not always, but most of the time, I just needed a spine, you know? I just needed to step up to the plate and do it. And I think that in most instances, that's really what we're dealing with people. In some instances, no, but for the most part, we just need a backbone, right? So, on behalf of myself and James and Cliff, we just want to thank you for having us. And, you know, I just want to leave you this one thought. And that is, you know, if you have a desire, you have a dream, if you're capable, if you're literally just capable of having it, then there's absolutely no question that you can make that dream inevitable. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much, John. And it's an honor to have you here. And thank you so much. Appreciate you. Thank you, thank you, thank you. Right, guys? Amazing, right?